So here is the long-awaited Judge Grimm's ruling. So let's deal with this whole thing here. I have it all figured out exactly how we're going to do it. As far as the points to speak to, the gist of the ruling, and let's get this information correct so people can actually understand what's going on here. I think there's some channels that have put out pretty good information about it, and other channels that did very bad at it, and then there were other channels that sort of came to the middle ground. So I'm gonna give you the real deal to you. So this is a case 8:1-CV-00883-PWG was filed in the court July 12th, 2019. And then it says, in the United States District Court for the District of Maryland, Southern Division, American Academy of Pediatrics versus Food and Drug Administration. And as it says, it's the memorandum, opinion, and order. So we'll do the first paragraph. In a memorandum, opinion, and order issued on May 15, 2019, I concluded that defendants, the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, then Commissioner of Food and Drugs, Scott Gottlieb, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and Secretary of Health and Human Services, Alex M. Azir II, violated the Administrative Procedures Act, APA. Also comes out of 5 United States Code 701 and the following sections, and that is a USC is United States Code is all acts of Congress. By issuing the extension of certain tobacco product compliance deadlines related to the final deeming rule, guidance for industry, revised August 2017 guidance without following the APA's notice and comment requirements. Accordingly, I granted plaintiff's motion for summary judgment and vacated the FDA's August 2017 guidance. And basically what that is the judge ruled completely in favor of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the Food and Drug Administration's August 2017 guidance was made null and void. He vacated it. And therefore, they had to set new deadlines, because the deadline that was originally in that August 2017 guidance first was August 8, 2022. Then it was moved to August 8th of 2021. In order for the judge to request remedy briefs in regards to those deadlines, and then for him to set the new deadline, he had to vacate that particular guidance, make it null and void. Okay. And then we go down to page 4. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Just get to the gist of it. So, what happened there? It sort of died. Let me pause that. That was strange. Like the print just erased from the page. Anyway, here it is. So let's go down to page 4, legal precedents, so we can understand what's going on here. What he's basically going to talk about is particular case law that has set precedents in the past that gives this particular court, Judge Grimm, the authority to go and say, look, we're going to have a remedy in this particular case. We're going to have a new deadline, and therefore the court is ordering the Food and Drug Administration to comply with this particular deadline of the 10 months. And But I don't want to get into too much of that. But this is basically what this is. Anyway, so the legal precedent. The Sixth Circuit has noted the court's authority to order injunctive relief to address agency action or inaction in this particular case would be called basically really both in a sense, but mainly inaction. It's action in regards to the 2017 August of 2017 draft guidance, as far as Gottlieb putting out that guidance and saying, well, it'll be August 8, 2022 or August 8, 2021 or whatever have you, okay? So it's according to, in regards to that action, but it's also inaction because they did not comply with the Family Smoking Prevention Tobacco Control Act of 2009, nor did they even comply with their own FDA final rule in regards to vaping, because the deadline was actually August 8, 2018. So they failed to act as well. So it's crazy. But anyway, it is well established that federal courts possess broad discretion to fashion equitable remedies. Okay? So there's certain things the court must do in order to tell a federal agency this is what must be done. Okay. So they quote the case here, right here from 1991. He's one of the main cases he goes by, Sixth Circuit. And also says it also is established that we may craft a declaratory and injunctive relief designed to preclude a federal agency from acting in contravention of its statutory and regulatory authority. It's also coming out of that Sixth Circuit, but it's 1984 in this case. So what it did in this particular case was that because the FDA was in contravention of its statutory and regulatory authority, therefore this court here, which is a lower court, because these are circuit courts, appeals court, they said, well, in certain circumstances, and I'll get to it in a moment, in certain circumstances, the court can tell a federal agency, yes, you have to comply with my particular order of the court. So, and that was mainly in regards to a Department of Housing and Urban Development. A lot of people say to themselves, yeah, well, that has nothing to do with the FDA. People don't understand how to read case law. It doesn't matter. It's basically all the same. For one thing, I'd say, for instance, this Department of Housing and Urban Development, for one thing, it's a federal agency, okay? So it's relative in that respect, okay? And they were dealing with the same issue, and therefore it's also relative to this particular case. And then if the gist of that particular case was about what they're dealing with in this particular case, then they can quote directly from that case, especially a case that has set precedents, that has set like new territory. So because if you don't do that, then, you know, it can be appealed by using some other case that was before 1980, after 1991, and it'll be like, wait, hold it here. You know, so this set the bar where when you can actually have a court say, no, you can't do these certain things. So you have to understand that even though it's Department of Housing and Urban Development, what's that have to do with vaping? It has a lot to do with vaping within the sense that it's a federal agency. Okay. And of course, as we should know, the Food and Drug Administration is a federal agency. So holding that the court may award declaratory and injunctive relief in order to ensure that the Department of Housing and Urban Development adopted regulations consistent with its enabling statute. I talked about this a lot in the past when the particular FDA final rule came out in regards to vaping back in May 10th of 2016. The enabling statute is the Family Smoking Prevention Tobacco Control Act. So adopted regulations consistent with its enabling statute. See, and that's in other words, if you just had the Family Smoking Prevention Tobacco Control Act and you didn't have the FDA final rule, then that Tobacco Control Act would still be around. It would still be around and operate just fine. On the other hand, if you took the Tobacco Control Act away from the picture and just had the FDA final rule, well, you couldn't even have it because it needs the TCA. In other words, the TCA can do without the FDA final rule in regards to vaping, but the FDA final rule in regards to vaping cannot exist without the TCA. Hopefully you can understand that. So it needs that TCA. And what he's basically saying, the judge, is that the FDA did not fulfill the statutory and regulatory requirements that is contained within the Tobacco Control Act. All right, we'll go down a little bit. Furthermore, the court may require an agency to modify its current or future practices in order to account for past violations of its statutes or regulations. So once again, quoting from this particular case here, is what they're basically saying is that because of these past violations of statutes and regulations, the court can actually require the agency to modify its current or future practices. The future practice was supposed to be August 8, 2021. So it gives the power to the court to compel the FDA to abide by the new deadline, which will be, of course, now, everyone knows, May 11th, 2020. Okay. I don't have to go into anything else there, right? Small and following paragraph. Following paragraph. Okay. I'm just trying to go by my notes that I have here. So, okay, I got that. Okay, so then we go to the last line. Okay, it says, under settled principles of administrative law, when a court reviewing agency action determines that an agency made an error of law, the court's inquiry is at an end. The case must be remanded to the agency for further action consistent with the corrected legal standards. But the D.C. Circuit also acknowledged that in extraordinary circumstances, district courts reviewing agency action will issue detailed remedial orders. And this is where we fall into. And you might say to yourself, well, it's the media that created the whole Juul situation and it's the FDA that created the whole epidemic of the youth situation, all this other stuff. You may say that. But as you will see in a moment, the court, after reading all the papers, and in fact, it certainly didn't help when you had the vaping industry come into this court case through their amicus briefs and it's like Friends of the Court. And they're trying to say, look, like Cry Me a River kind of stories and all this other crap that they were feeding this court. And thank goodness this court did not buy it. They're like, no, you had plenty of time for a very long time to do your PMTAs, your pre-market tobacco applications. And each one was denied by this judge. They were all denied. He read them. He said, no, don't cry me a river. Show me what you actually did. At least has one particular company, even Juul, the biggest vape company around in U.S. markets territories, did not even attempt to do a PMTA. Not even didn't prove to the court that was even in the process of completing a PMTA. And they were like, well, we need more time. Yeah. Well, the court didn't buy it. The court did not buy it. And so throughout the last year or two, especially if you even read Mitch Zeller's declaration, he even says how they've had a serious youth epidemic. And he agrees that there was that. And then you also have the American Academy of Pediatrics that certainly have said to this court, yes, there is a youth epidemic. So you combine the two, both the plaintiff and the defendant is agreeing to that. And then you apply how, I've always said, if anyone's follows this channel for a long time here, I've always said August 8th of 2022 was just too long. It was too unreasonable. It was unreasonable. I used to have this big argument with Bruce, not so much Jerry, my old live co-host. I used to always have these arguments that August 8th of 2022 is too long. It's too far out. I always said August 8th, 2020 would have been reasonable. August 8th of 2019 would have definitely been reasonable. That is, former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb extending it out from August 8th, 2018 outward. Right? But I've always said August 8th of 2020 would be reasonable. But no, what does he do? He moves it all the way out to August 8th, 2022, the original date. Moved it as far as his original date. Gottlieb's original date that he moved it out to was August 8th, 2022. Completely unreasonable. That was stupid. That was just dumb of Gottlieb. Maybe he thought, well, we'll have the United States Department of Justice. No, they'll bail us out. Don't worry about it. What did he care, To me, it was like a dictator in a lot of ways. And it was a shame because, well, he just oughtn't be that way. I lost a lot of respect for him. Vapors, for the most part, never had any respect for him. They just took advantage of him, exploited him. And I've always had respect for the man after reading about him. But, it's funny. I always said, and this is even before he became a commissioner when I was doing my live shows, that this guy's big pharma. This guy's big pharma. No one listened to me. Oh, people are telling me, oh, no. This guy's going to be, reasonable or whatever with electronic cigarettes or vapor products or whatever, I'm like, And then as time goes by, when he first gets into office and he moves these dates around and he's trying to, because he was a managing director of Cure, Kure. So he's a managing director of all that, and so he tried to do what was best for the adult vapor, regardless of the adult vapor appreciated it or not. They never appreciated him at all. But in the beginning, I sort of somewhat respected him, but not really. I was just on the fence. I was more let's see what he does. And he gets in May 2017. So it's June, July. 2 months later, he does this thing with the August 2017 draft guidance. Moves it all the way out to August 8, 2022. And I was like, that is unreasonable. And then he does all this other crap and he dances around and all this other garbage, And I lost a lot of respect for him. I lost a lot of respect for the guy. And it's a shame because he could have done really well in his position. He has a lot of power in his position. But between all of that crap that he was doing and with the dates moved out and then the whole thing, because what happened was the industry, he didn't understand that Gottlieb, that the industry took advantage of him, exploited him when he said August 8, 2022. Because Five Pawns was even in the process of doing their PMTAs, and then as soon as they got the extension to August 8, 2022, Five Pawns was like, oh yeah, oh well, we'll stop that, save some money. And and it all just imploded thereafter. And then you have that spike in the youth usage and all of that. Some people don't, most vapors, if not 99.9% of vapors, don't like the word epidemic, but it's just a rapid increase, and there was a rapid increase. So you could debate the percentages coming out of the Center for Disease Control. Oh, you like? I don't care. Doesn't matter. You don't hold any power, as you could tell. You lost in Congress. You lost in the court system, and you lost with Trump. He even said user fee, federal excise tax, $100 million. So you lost everywhere in every single part of the government. The federal government, let alone the states and the local governments. So it doesn't matter if you think it's an epidemic or not. It doesn't matter because you have no voice. You got that? I don't want to hear like Anthony from Vapors TV say, what is it? I vape, I vote. Oh, I vote, I vape. Or whatever the hell it is. It doesn't matter. You have no voice. You have no power. Give me those thumbs down. It's fine. I give you reality on this channel, and a lot of you guys can't handle that. It's true. You have no power. If you had power, you would be steering the ship forward into the future, but you have no power. You're doing what a court is telling you to do. That is, I'm not talking to you individually as a vapor, but I'm talking about the vaping industry. If you take the vaping industry out of the picture, there is no vapor. What are you going to do? Vape. Understand? Maybe not. Anyway, I don't want to get on too much of time, but the point is I wanted to explain what this extraordinary circumstances is. So you have a youth epidemic, you got the flavor problems with the youth, you got Juul problems, you got battery explosions, people getting hurt, you got a lot of stuff going out on the media, just all kinds of stuff. And then the Congress was like, enough is enough. They clamped down on Gottlieb, finally got rid of him. He said, oh, I'm going to spend some time with my family. Yeah, right. And I've said that was the first one to say that, and everyone's like, oh, maybe. No. And I was like, no, it's not about the family. They all do that. Every single big shot in the world, private sector or the government, will say, and because basically where that comes from is the person that's firing you is saying, look, you could always resign, put your 2 weeks in, put your week in, whatever, month in, whatever it is, no more than a month, or and resign that way, and we'll put a nice little message out there, well, you had for the family or whatever, you went on vacation or you whatever the hell it may be, or we fire you. What is your choice? Yeah. I mean, unless you did something like, really bad, they're going to fire you. But if it's not super duper duper bad, or maybe they have some affectionate feelings for you or whatever it may be, they have some sympathy for your situation or whatever it may be, they usually will give you a choice. Or you will actually begin to realize that I'm going to be getting fired in about a couple of days. I might as well just resign. And that's probably what happened with Gottlieb. When he went off to the White House, he's thinking, yeah, well, the only cover story I have, which is not real, is that I'll have security check you at the door in regards to the age verification. But I know I'm getting fired today. I'll come up with the thing. I'll make a deal with them. Yes, I will. So they talked, and they put out a cover story. The cover story was family, and the rest is history. Anyway, let's go back to this. So I don't get too much off of my little rants. Okay. This video will go for about 2 years. So that's mainly the extraordinary circumstances. It's just everything that's been going on since former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb got into that position. Everything got out of whack, completely out of whack. We're supposed to be completely being enforced upon after August 8, 2018. And what Gottlieb did was he threw it all out of whack. Okay? And it made for these extraordinary circumstances. And now we're in the area we're in. All right. So then first paragraph. That's time. Okay. And then 6, first paragraph. Okay. Sorry about that. Yep, I did that. Okay. And then 2. Okay. So it says, the issue is whether this case presents those extraordinary circumstances that call for more than a simple remand or vacatur. Defendants agree with plaintiffs and the court that the recent epidemic level rise in youth e-cigarette use is a mounting public health crisis that demands a robust regulatory response, including through enforcement of the Tobacco Control Act's pre-market review provision. So defendants, even the FDA, acknowledges that there is an epidemic, okay? But they argue that, nevertheless, bedrock principles of administrative law constrain the court's authority to enter the specific relief the plaintiffs request. And, of course, the plaintiffs requested 120 days, 4 months. In their view, the court should simply remand to the FDA to permit it to choose a course of action consistent with the court's opinion. Well, the court knew better, because the court thought to themselves, well, if I left it up to the FDA, well, it might even be August 8th of 2049. He didn't buy it. He used a lot of caution when he approached this case. You could tell that in his demeanor as a judge. Smart judge, actually. I mean, most judges are smart, you know. So that's pretty explanatory, you know. And the FDA is saying that, you know, the court can't tell what to do, but actually they can. And I showed you already, and then he's going to get into it a little bit more. Take a vape here. Let me pause this real quick. So it says, in the new guidance that the FDA expects to approve within 120 days, and this is in regards to the flavor ban, the limited flavor ban. The FDA plans to accelerate the pre-market review requirements for the products that are most attractive to youth, such as flavored products, consistent with the Tobacco Control Act. And the factual record here is unlike in, and they're quoting a case. So what they're doing here is within 120 days. So it'll be coming out sometime like August, September, October, probably sometime from now to October, November of 2019. This limited flavor ban in regards to the, like it says, the in the new guidance that expects to approve within. So they had the draft guidance, and then back in, I believe it was April or May of 2018, they had the advance notice proposed rulemaking, where you have notice and comment. So they follow that right. They're supposed to have had a notice opposed rulemaking. Apparently, they never had that, but whatever. Whatever. It doesn't matter. All right, and then they will issue a draft guidance, which will eventually turn into a final rule, or they could very well just issue a final rule on it. And that, I believe, I don't know, it's not so necessary, I believe, but if you read what's going on here with the FDA, they can issue either a draft guidance and delay it some more, because if they issue a draft guidance, it's not legally binding on the FDA and the public. And because they went through the notice and comment period, they follow the procedural, the Administrative Procedures Act. So they follow that. So there's no, in other words, the American Academy of Pediatrics aren't going to take them back to court on this particular limited flavor ban issue, okay? Because they follow the notice and comment period. They followed what was supposed to be done within the Administrative Procedures Act. So they can do two things. They can issue a draft guidance, but that is not legally binding, or they can issue a final rule. Now, this final rule, so far, on the Office of Management and Budget, it's still in the proposed stage. I've been keeping up on it. I don't know if anyone else has, but it's only in the proposed stage. So it hasn't gone into even the final rule stage. It's still being reviewed, so to speak, it's a combination of the FDA still working on it, and it's about to be reviewed by the Office of Management and Budget, or being looked over a little bit, but whatever. But it's not in the final rule. So they could do draft guidance or final rule. In this particular case, it's going to go into that final rule stage. And they will have a final rule in regards to this limited flavor ban. And then the final rule is legally binding upon the public and the FDA. So, and I'm sure the industry, the funny thing about it, the vaping industry will say to themselves, oh, well, we're going to fight that in the court of law, that's for sure. And meanwhile, they're going to waste probably hundreds of thousands of dollars for that. But yet, on May 11th of 2022, you won't have any flavors, no vaping products, no e-liquids, hardware, software. You're going to have a whole big thing like, we're going to sue the FDA for that. No limited flavor ban. How dare they? So they'll go back to court, spend all that money instead of putting it to their PMTAs or tailoring their PMTAs in regards to the flavors that the FDA has decided upon, and finally get that through, one of those PMTAs, right? It's really ridiculous. But time has run out for the vaping industry. Time has finally run out. Really, they deserve that. And what I'm about to read to you, I agree with the court. They have taken advantage, exploited not only the federal government, but they even exploited the everyday vapor. They don't care about us. They don't really care. They're about money. If they cared about the vapor, always having vapor products around, they would have completed these PMTAs about 2 years ago, because they've been aware of the notice proposed rulemaking since April 2014. It's been over 5 years. So I don't want to hear it. They could have at least got one e-liquid through. So that's what they're basically doing. Is most likely it's going to be a limited flavor ban, and it's going to come out as a final rule. Most likely. But could very well come out as a draft guidance. They still have not yet had a final rule on that. So we'll see what they do. But even if they came out with a draft guidance, it gives the FDA discretion if they're going to enforce that limited flavor ban or not. So let me explain that, so some people might not understand that. In a draft guidance, when they do a draft guidance, which is not legally binding on the public and the FDA, they don't necessarily need to enforce that particular limited flavor ban. Whereas when they do a final rule, that's when they have to enforce. And hopefully you understand that. So let's see what they come out with. Cross your fingers. Okay, so then we'll go down to 8. Vape here. So it says the FDA's position is strongly at odds with the industries in 2 significant respects. First, the industry contends disingenuously that it cannot complete its applications without further formal guidance. Yet, according to defendants, it is commonplace for companies and individuals to call the FDA for guidance, and the FDA has made clear that it is willing to work with manufacturers in the interim to provide informal guidance. So the door is always open. In fact, it always has to be open, because by law, it's not like the FDA is being nice. Don't get it wrong. Don't get it wrong. The FDA is not being nice in this matter. By law, part of the process, by law, the FDA's door has to be open. Don't take it for, well, that's nice of the FDA. No, it has nothing to do with that. So you understand. So you have defendants, which is the FDA, and when they say the industry, they mean the vaping industry. Okay. So it says specifically, the FDA disagrees with the MSC's suggestion that the pre-market review provision could not be enforced before the completion of planned rulemakings concerning the pre-market tobacco application, PMTA, and substantial equivalence SE pathways. The statute itself sets forth the baseline requirements for PMTAs and SE reports, and this is mainly coming out of, right here is the Tobacco Control Act, Family Smoking Prevention Tobacco Control Act, okay? And the issue and the agency has issued a number of lengthy guidance documents discussing these statutory requirements, and they have issued these documents, these draft guidances, since 2011. And even though a lot of that has to do with like smokeless tobacco or pipe tobacco and things of that nature, you can still get a pretty good idea of what to do with vaping products, believe it or not, since 2011, which is what, over 8 years ago. Over 8 years ago. So they had plenty time to adjust, to understand, to get an idea of what's about to happen to the vaping industry. In fact, I forgot, he actually even says it. So it issued final guidance concerning the substantial equivalence process in January 2011. See, so it's been a long time, long before the deeming rule was finalized. 3 versions of a frequently asked questions document concerning the SE process, most recently in December 2016, which is true. I've done video on that one. In fact, I did a video on this. Not that anyone paid attention. It's in the FDA final rule. The 18 videos I did, hardly anyone watched that. If you watched that, if people watched that, they'd really be hip to what's going on, but don't hardly ever watch those videos. And draft guidance concerning PMTAs for electronic nicotine delivery systems, ENDS or e-cigarettes in May 2016. We should all know about that, which it finalized in substantially similar form in June of 2019. That's the most recent one in regards to PMTAs, the final draft guidance. The FDA has authorized the marketing of more than 1,000 tobacco products under the statute alone without the rulemakings that the MSC suggests are essential. This is basically friends of the court, is what it is. It's Latin stuff. I know I'm probably mispronouncing it anyway, but this is basically what it means is friends of the court. This is when the industry, the vaping industry, decided to become friends of the court. No, yeah, enemies of the court, more like that. Since 2013, it has issued 1,070 substantial equivalence marketing orders and 12 PMTA marketing orders. And that's coming out of the Zeller declaration, including for some of the MSC's, I guess, own products. And that's not the vaping industry that you and I know of, but it's coming from Altria. Because Altria actually was one of the friends of the court when it came to this particular situation, because they sort of jumped in line with Juul to submit a friends of the court motion to this particular court. So that's where all this is coming from. There's no vapor products. It's just big tobacco, things of that nature. Like maybe they modified a combustible cigarette or something with, I don't know, an added chemical or whatever. So this is where these numbers are coming from. This has nothing to do at all with vaping that you and I know of. And it has, in fact, issued warning letters for the unauthorized marketing of deemed new tobacco products that were not on the market as of August 8, 2016, among them such kid-friendly e-liquid flavors as cherry bombs, cereal treats loops, and heavy custard unicorn cake. And this all, once again, had to do with trademark violations. I've done many videos on that. And so that's pretty much it. So when you take all of this whole paragraph that he did here, you take it all into consideration. The vaping industry had plenty of time. They were all noticed for a very long time to start their PMTAs, and they just ignored it. They just thought, well, we'll keep fighting them in court, and just the federal government will back off from them. They'll spend tens of thousands of dollars a year to the Vapor Technology Association, Not Blowing Smoke, American Vaping Association, Ames, and all this other crap, right? Safada and all these guys, thinking that, well, we have these people here, we have these organizations here, these trade association representatives. They're going to make sure, they're going to hold back to the hands of time. They're going to make sure that we're protected, No. And they lost. They lost big time. You can only play the game so long before it's like, okay, well, we gave you enough breaks and you still screwed it all up. So, it's crazy. Anyway, so let's see, 8, okay. The 9, take a vape. Got to do this whole thing here. This is really good. Beard Vape Company Vapor Made Pancake. Like a little pancake in the morning, I say. A pancake. A little pancake in the morning. Pancake in the morning without the added fat. Yes. Almost done, guys. Second, defendants acknowledge that, contrary to the industry's claim that millions of American adults use ENDS products to help them quit smoking cigarettes, there is currently insufficient data to draw a conclusion about the efficacy of e-cigarettes as a cessation device, as there is evidence for and against the proposition that e-cigarettes help some individual users to quit using combusted tobacco products or to reduce their use of such products. It's true. As far as combusted cigarettes, who knows? You don't know until you do your PMTAs, and that comes out of that environmental assessment. Yes, that's included in that particular section. You have to prove to the FDA that your product is better for the public health, to make those health claims, saying that they're better than combustible cigarettes. Now, will the vaping industry do their modified risk claims? I doubt that very much. They might try to pull it off, but they're going to fail miserably at that. But they'll at least maybe get like the IQOS. IQOS, Philip Morris, with all their billions and billions and billions of dollars, the modified risk claim in regards to saying that their product, as far as health claims are concerned, is better for you than this or that and that and this, that's still pending with the FDA. They didn't never get approved with that. But they can market their particular product. And that's probably the only thing the vaping industry can hope for. And then as far as to reduce the use of such products, that is, I've been on 3 milligrams for about 3, maybe 4 years. I started off in April 2011 at 24, I believe it was. And then I dropped down to 12, didn't stay there long, then dropped down to 6. Stayed there for a little while. Stayed there for, about a year or so. And then about that, 6 months to a year. And then finally got down to 3. I have a video up on this channel. It's called 10 hours and 26 minutes. And I actually tried to do away with nicotine. And that's how long I lasted, 10 hours and 26 minutes. And then my body was craving the nicotine. So, like it says, to reduce the use of such products. I guess I've reduced it from 24 to 3. But I still have many products, that I've bought. It's not like, especially as a hobbyist, I didn't buy just one vape device. I have several of them, almost 100 of them. In fact, if you count the 2 mech mods and the fully mechanical box mods and the regulated devices, I have over 100 devices. And I have all the reviews on this channel. So, and it's not like I just stuck with one e-liquid. If you look at this channel in the e-liquid playlist, I think I have like over 400 e-liquid reviews that I've had, and that was even before I was doing the YouTube. I bought a lot of e-liquids before I even have a YouTube channel, so I never did any reviews on those particular e-liquids. So I've probably had over 800, maybe to 1,000 different e-liquids over my lifetime here since. As a vapor, that is, since April 2011. So when you take all that into consideration, did it really reduce my use of the products? No, it didn't. In a way it did, but in a way it didn't. Got me from 24 to 3, but I'm stuck on 3. I might be able to go down to 1.5, but anyway, so that's that. Anyway, and everyone out there that even if they watch this video will have their own particular personalized experience as to how it was you reduced using these particular products in multiple ways. Says further, defendants note the industry's responsibility for fueling the present problem of youth e-cigarette use by allowing dangerous and addictive products to fall into the hands of youth, whether by neglect or design, assert that there is substantial evidence that manufacturers have specifically targeted youth, both with kid-friendly fruit and candy flavors and youth-directed advertising. So these are, when the court or the Judge Grimm put it all in perspective, he realized that the vaping industry, they just took advantage of Gottlieb, just exploited him for every moment they can get out of him. And meanwhile, just, the whole entire market is like worse than Wild Wild West. It's like wild, and wild, and some wildly more Wild West. It's just completely out of control. Indeed, however laudable hopefully I pronounced that right, the FDA's intended regulatory response is, the record before me shows a purposeful avoidance by the industry of complying with their pre-market requirements despite I can't do that word, from the FDA that it can do so, and it establishes a shockingly low rate of filings. In other words, none, actually. And it is far from clear how an impending deadline would force some of the most successful companies to withdraw from the market entirely. See, so he knows the big companies will actually submit their PMTAs, but you have to push them to that limit. You have to push them into it by shortening this timeline. When they have large purses and the resources to complete promptly the applications that they have had before them for years. So they should have been doing this for years. They've been on notice since 2011. ENDS manufacturers have not just sat around. They have done what they can to prepare for the PMTA process, but ENDS manufacturers come in different shapes and sizes with vastly different levels of resources to devote to trying to anticipate what FDA would require. Now, this is coming out of, I wonder why it makes no sense. This is actually coming out of the vaping industry's own particular brief as far as the Friends of the Court motion. I was saying to myself, whoa, United States Department of Justice usually catches all this stupid grammar issues, but the industry's lawyers did not catch all the grammatical problems there. Anyway, for example, there are not enough accredited third-party laboratories qualified to conduct various types of testing, and small manufacturers lack the resources to do those tests themselves. This is, of course, the excuse that the industry has said to the court, and the court did not buy it, and neither do I. I don't know about you guys out there. Thus, the record offers a little assurance that in the absence of a deadline for filing, the industry will do anything other than raise every roadblock it can and take every available dilatory measure to keep its products on the market without approval. Absolutely. I mean, this judge is just like slam the brakes. It's like an 18-wheeler truck and just slam that thing, took a beautiful Porsche and just bang that brake all the way down and went from 160 miles an hour to 0 in less than a second. Probably flipped that car. But anyway, yeah, the court is not taking any crap. You understand? He sees the record before him, and the industry only made it worse for themselves trying to be friends of the court. They are not friends of the court. They're more like enemies of the court. And the judge did not buy it. Not at all. I've been talking about like this for years. Let's see, 9 to 10. Okay, and that's that. Okay. So when the industry submitted their papers to this court, all it did was backfire on them because this court was not buying it. Go down to the third paragraph. I conclude that this court has the authority to impose such a deadline under the extraordinary circumstances of this case, in which prompt action is necessary to combat the epidemic level rise in youth e-cigarette use, which undisputedly is a mounting public health crisis. It's coming out of the FDA's brief. Pursuant to the Administrative Procedures Act, a federal district court may compel agency action unlawfully withheld or unreasonably delayed. Okay, so pursuant to the Administrative Procedures Act itself, see? Or as plaintiffs asked this court to do, hold unlawful and set aside agency action findings and conclusions found to be unlawful. It's coming out of the United States Code, the Act of Congress. Agency actions includes a failure to act. So this is coming out of this particular case here, 2006. As plaintiffs assert, this court has observed that the words set aside need not be interpreted narrowly when devising an appropriate remedy. And he's doing a whole slew of lovely cases right here. Got a First Circuit here, Court of Appeals, District of Maryland, his own court. So he's basically saying that the FDA is obligated to this court to do certain things. In other words, the funny thing about it all is, you really think about it, the vaping industry did whatever it wanted to, and the Food and Drug Administration under Gottlieb did whatever it wanted to. And it was just crazy. It just made the problem even worse. And there had to be a court to say, no more to this. You can't do it. Not according to the law, you can't. You want to live in a barbaric society? Yeah, but not according to the constitutional republic, not according to capitalism in America. Let's see, 11, so 11, second to that. Okay, so almost done here. And Thompson, and they're quoting this particular case here, this Thompson case here. In Thompson, the court noted that once a court concludes that an agency failed to remedy past wrongs, the court is required to fashion a remedy that ensures a future compliance with the Constitution. Hopefully no one has a problem with the United States Constitution. My only response to that is, if you do not like the United States Constitution, then you need to leave the United States and its territories as quick as you can. And that federal agencies are not immune from the federal court's traditional equitable powers. After finding that HUD was unlikely to comply with its statutory obligations in the foreseeable future absent judicial compulsion, the court concluded that it had discretion to exercise its equitable powers to tailor a remedy for HUD's long-standing failure to meet its statutory obligations. So because HUD, which is a federal agency, same thing as an FDA, it's all relative, you have to understand this stuff, failed to act, therefore a court can actually tell this federal agency, yes, you must act, and this is how we're going to do it. This is consistent with the Sixth Circuit's stance in, and then you see the case, and the District of the District of Columbia's earlier collection of appellate cases, affirming a district court's power to extend statutory deadlines to remedy improper agency delay. And it is not inconsistent with the D.C. Circuit's more recent observation that ordinarily the appropriate course is simply to identify a legal error and then remand to the agency, because the role of the district court in such situations is to act as an appellate tribunal. As an appellate tribunal, in regards in this particular case, it's not an actual circuit court. Don't get it mixed up, okay? People get mixed up on like, well, he said appellate. Isn't that an appeals court? You mean to tell me? I thought it said United States District Court. It's not the circuit court, is it? It's not the appeals court. No, don't get mixed up. This is the United States. It's a lower court, okay? Like it says, because the role of the district court in such situations is to act as an appellate tribunal in regards to legal wrongs and remanding it to the agency. In other words, it's above the agency. The court itself, its powers are above the federal agency, which is, a federal agency has a lot of power. But a court, even though it's a lower court, has more power above that. If you understand that, you sort of have to understand that, okay? It's legal theory, once again, but you have to understand it, okay? Because these are the extraordinary circumstances in which district courts reviewing agency action should issue detailed remedial orders, given the steps that the FDA has outlined with respect to its coordinated approach to deal with this public health crisis and the timetable that they have proposed and I have approved. I do not find that there is any present need to require court monitoring, can never do that, through quarterly reports. So what the plaintiffs have asked is every 3 months, the FDA actually has to go back to court, to this particular district court, and answer to it. He's not requesting that. He is requesting it in a way, but he's not really requesting that, okay? Like it says, however, I will retain jurisdiction to ensure that if the need arises, further action could be taken by the court. So, for instance, let's say May 11th, 2020 rolls around, and whatever products that were not submitted to the FDA needs to be enforced upon. And let's say the American Academy of Pediatrics sees that the FDA is not enforcing their statutes, is not enforcing against these particular companies that did not submit their PMTAs to the FDA by May 11th, 2020. What can very well happen, though, is that, let's say 6 months goes by after May 11th, 2020, and the American Academy of Pediatrics and the other plaintiffs say, wait, hold it here. Here we go again. The FDA is falling behind. They can make a motion to the court and drag the FDA back to court. So the FDA has to answer to the court why they're becoming lax, why there is inaction, etc., etc., etc. So it keeps a bit of fire under the FDA's rear end, but it's not like every 3 months they got to check back in, It's like a parole officer or something, right? I never had one of them, but let's say I'm going to resume what a parole officer basically does is they keep, tabs on you. So every week or every month or whatever the hell it is, check in with me. That's not the way the court's going to do it with the FDA. It's going to be probably prompted by the plaintiffs to bring the FDA back to court. So the FDA has to answer to the court why they're delaying their enforcement actions. So it just keeps a little heat under the FDA's rear end. And then the order. So accordingly, it is this 11th day of July 2019, hereby ordered that, and this is why it is May 11th, 2019, because it's actually stated in the order, actually. Hereby ordered that the FDA shall require that for new tobacco products on the market as of the August 8th of 2016 effective date of the deeming rule, applications for marketing orders must be filed within 10 months of the date of this memorandum, opinion, and order. So, within 10 months. The court would prefer the vaping industry to submit sometime like maybe 6 to 8 months, not wait until the last week because the FDA is not going to say, well, okay, we'll give you another 6 months or whatever to, it's not going to work that way. And we'll get to this case-by-case basis in a moment here. But no, not at all. You're given May 11th, 2020. That's a deadline period. Okay? They got to get hip to that. They got to accept that as reality and deal with it. New products for which applications have not been filed within this period shall be subject to FDA enforcement actions in the FDA's discretion. And this is really, like it says, new products, okay? Now, the only products that can be submitted to the FDA are products that have a manufacturer finished product date before August 8, 2016. So all these new products that have come after August 8th of 2016, which are not supposed to be on the market, as I've always said, like it says, shall be subject to FDA enforcement actions. Okay? All those products after August 8, 2016 are in direct conflict with the law. They're not supposed to be on the market. Now, the catch to that, as I said in another video, is in FDA's discretion. So once again, it goes back to the discretion. If you look at their history, they're relaxed in that area. But the problem with this is, like I said, there's a couple catches in all this here. I said in an earlier video. Let's say 6 months go by and they still have failed to enforce against the vaping industry. Then the American Academy of Pediatrics will make a motion to the court, and the court will compel the FDA to come back to answer to it why they have delayed their enforcement action. And then that song and dance will go on for probably years until they finally contain or control the vaping industry. And then as time goes by, the black market become, pushed down even more and more quieter and more quieter and more quieter as time goes by. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be years before all this stuff is all straightened out. Okay, so you have to understand that. Because the FDA does have, when they do discretion, and that's one of the things they liked, is in FDA discretion. Okay, so this is one of the main reasons why they did not appeal. One of the main reasons why. The way the federal statute reads, that is the Family Smoking Prevention Tobacco Control Act, it says enforcement. Doesn't say FDA discretion. Doesn't say that. It says enforcement. Period. Across the board. But the court wanted to give a little bit to the FDA at least, and say, well, your FDA is a discretion, but it has a catch to it, and that is, it could always FDA can be compelled to come back to the court to answer to it why they're not enforcing. So it's going to be an ongoing process. Ongoing process. And then you might be thinking to yourself, oh, I hope that Judge Grimm dies, and then that'll be the end. No. The court itself will just appoint another judge to oversee this particular case, and it will continue on. Absolutely. Continue on. It's an order of the court. Now, in order for the judge to say to him or herself, well, I don't particularly agree with this particular court ruling, believe it or not, that judge is strapped into that court order. You don't like it? Go find a job as a janitor. And that, especially after the grace period, that there was no appeal to this particular case, even if they have 20 other judges apply this particular case into the future, this ruling, this court order, it stays in stone forever. Unless, of course, Congress steps in. But, Congress is going to and tweak the Tobacco Control Act. Well, no, the Congress can do this. No, never going to happen, by the way, guys. It would never happen. But Congress can go back into the Tobacco Control Act, tweak it, say the FDA has discretion. Anything they say goes. They could do that, but they're not going to do that either. Anyway, so that's that. So, it's good that the court gave the FDA the discretionary powers, but they better not take advantage of it like they have in the past, or the American Academy of Pediatrics is going to motion the court and compel the FDA to come back to the court, answer to the court, and they're going to straighten the FDA out again, unless the FDA has, a good excuse for their behavior. Anyway, so then it goes on to say, new products for which applications have been timely filed may remain on the market without being subject to FDA enforcement actions for a period not to exceed 1 year from the date of application while FDA considers the application. And then we pretty much know that. It's actually supposed to be 180 days. That's according to federal statute out of the Tobacco Control Act. But according to the FDA final rule in regards to vaping, they made it a year. And the judge said, okay, it's reasonable enough, make it a year. And then the FDA shall have the ability to exempt new products from following requirements for good cause on a case-by-case basis. Now I have to bring that up. I explained that when I did a Will You Wind Up on the Channel War 2019 in regards to Ruby Roo just last week. But let me bring that up and just show you something. 1 second. So this case-by-case basis is really a copied and pasted right out of the Federal Register in regards to the FDA final rule in regards to vaping. This is the May 10, 2016 when the Federal Register became law. Department of Health and Human Services, Food and Drug Administration. I believe it's on page 6. Just scroll it down. There you go. Let's make this a little bigger so you read it. In the middle section, and what it is here, let me make this small here. So out of 28978, it's a section / page because there's volumes of all this. Okay. Federal Register, volume 81, number 90, Tuesday, May 10, 2016, rules and regulations. And if you go to the middle section, and you scroll down a little bit, it speaks to it, the case-by-case basis. So, and this is mainly the area that it speaks to. And I spoke about it in the Ruby Roo thing, but anyway, I'll explain it again here. If at the time of the conclusion of the continued compliance period, the applicant has provided the needed information and review of a pending marketing application has made substantial progress toward completion, FDA may consider on a case-by-case basis whether to defer enforcement of the pre-market authorization requirements for a reasonable time period. So it's mainly here, substantial progress toward completion and then reasonable time period. Now, so we'll deal with this first. So let's say 5 Pawns is putting an e-liquid through, and they need to do it through an attorney, like I said in the other, to just for the 5 Pawns president or owner and operator of the company, actually I think the 2 of them, to talk to the FDA about this, not going to work. It's not going to work. It's going to fail. And I'm sure, I'm going to presume that 5 Pawns is smart enough to have a regulatory attorney involved in their whole entire PMTA process. I'm sure they have one already anyway, even before this whole court ruling came out. So this lawyer will talk to the FDA and say, look, we're about 90% done with our PMTAs. The legal writer is just looking over it, making sure, proofreading it, making sure it's, all the T's are slashed, all the I's are dotted, everything's just good to go. We're just compiling the papers. We just have a few little things to do here and there. We just need a little bit more time past May 11th, 2020. And like it says, reasonable time usually is 30 days. They might make that maybe up to 90 days, but probably not. Be 30 days, because if they make it, even on a situation like this, if they made it for 90 days, the American Academy of Pediatrics, because they're going to be watching. They're going to be watching very closely. Oh, absolutely. They're going to be watching very closely. And they're going to say, 90 days? And they're going to drag the FDA back into court. They could drag them into court over that and say, why did you give them an extra 90 days? And the FDA has to actually answer to that. Okay. Normally, reasonable time is 30 days under federal statute in regards to the Family Smoking Prevention Tobacco Control Act, as well as the FDA final rule in regards to vaping. In regards to this, it's normally 30 days. Okay, so let's say May 11th, 2020, is here and now, and Five Points says, yeah, well, we got about 90% of our PMTAs done. We need a little more time. So through the regulatory attorney that they have, the FDA will say, okay, we'll give you 30 days. Should be enough time. Or the FDA could say to the regulatory attorney, could not so much request, but say, how long do you think it will be until you actually have all your papers in order and then submit it to the FDA? And the regulatory attorney may say, and he better be well equipped. I mean, he better have this time, the moment that the FDA, it's not like, well, let me check with 5 Points. I'll get back to you in a week. No, he or she has to know that answer if the FDA requests that. And let's say he says 45 days. Maybe, possibly, the FDA will say, okay, 45 days. That's it. And then the 45 days are up. And let's say, hopefully, the 5 Points finally have it all together and they submit it to the FDA. If they don't have it all together, then it's over for the 5 Points, and they will literally go out of business. Okay, so it's very, very when you make that quote unquote promise to the FDA, okay, 45 days or 30 days or whatever have you, you better have your act together, because if you don't submit it within that time frame, then it's over. Just forget it. I mean, you look really bad in the eyes of the FDA, and they're giving you this grace period, and you took advantage of it for whatever reason, whatever. That's why, like I say, you need a regulatory attorney involved. If you just do it yourself and you request it from the FDA, just saying to yourself, yeah, if I could just delay this a little longer so I can make some more money on the internet, and that 45 days are up, the FDA will enforce upon that entire company. Absolutely. They'll literally take the company off the market through an FDA warning letter. And then, or maybe not even do that. They could very well have the state just remove your entire company. Or in fact, they might just not even issue an FDA warning letter. In extraordinary circumstances, it can happen that way sometimes, but it's very rare. Because in a sense, the FDA could say, well, we gave you notice, basically implied notice. That is, we gave you 45 days and you screwed that up. And then we wound up realizing the reason why you asked 45 days was just to get around the system. That's a fraud. You can't do that. You lied to us. We're taking your company off the market. So in a way, that's an implied notice. So the FDA, I'm sure, when they go to the United States District Court with their because it hasn't come from a judge's order to put that particular business out of business, the FDA will say, that company took advantage of us. It wasn't they really wanted to work with us or anything. They weren't even intending to do what they said within 45 days and so they could submit their PMTAs in a submission. No, they just did it to get around the law or whatever. That judge is not going to be very happy with that particular company, and that judge will issue a no sales tobacco order and shut down the entire company on the spot. And like I said in the past, The FDA has not lost one single solitary FDA warning letter and any of these types of court actions. When they take a company to court in regards to the Family Smoking Prevention Tobacco Control Act, and it's not just vaping companies either. Okay, though they have yet to do that with the vaping industry. But like with big tobacco, they have done this multiple times with big tobacco. And they have, in the thousands, have taken them to a court of law over the years, okay, since 2009. And they, this is big tobacco with billions of dollars, and they have lost every single case. The FDA has won every single case. So, so you don't want to BS the FDA if you ask for this reasonable time period. Okay, you want to be real about it, or they're going to nail your ass. So, substantial progress toward completion. So that's what basically that means. So you have to have at least 90% of your PMTAs done, and you have to prove that. You know, the regulatory attorney, they're not going to really take his word for it even. They're going to say, well, give us an outline as to exactly what you have completed so far. And then if the FDA takes a look over it and says, okay, yeah, okay, you got 30 days, but the attorney says, well, we need a little longer than that. And the FDA says, well, what do you think? How long is how long? And the attorney says, we figure about 45 days. FDA is going to hold you to that 45 days, or it's over for your company. So that's what basically all that case-by-case basis means, which is good. Because, man, vaping causes phlegm. Yes. Anyway, because sometimes in certain circumstances, like it says case-by-case basis, it's not necessarily 10 months. It might be 11 months, you know. So anyway, that's that. And that's it. So then you have Paul W. Grimm, United States District Court or District Judge. And that's it. And that is this particular video on this. I know it's long-winded. I try to give examples. See, that's what happens. Not only do I just read whatever court decision it is, but I give a lot of examples to give you different angles to what's going on here to try to round it out for you to get it so you can get a good idea of what's going on. Like other channels will talk about little excerpts, little, you know, sound bites of this court ruling, but I'm giving you the real deal. I'm giving you everything. And so this is that, and that is this. So I waited a week. I put a lot of those Will You Wind Up on This Channel War 2019 videos out because I knew everyone would screw things up, and they certainly did. I think the closest, I would say this, the closest person that got to it, that pretty much understood it for the most part in the overall, was Danielle on the Ruby Roo channel. She was the closest to understanding, and not only understanding it, but to explaining what this court ruling is all about. And then I would say, no, that's pretty much it. There's not many other channels that really, I think NVR Network tried to explain it, but a little bit. Jen screwed up at first, and then Robert, or Vaping Miniman, corrected her, but he didn't really get to the gist of the matter as far as, you know, like it says on the bottom, like this is what Danielle was dealing with. She didn't go into the entire court order. She dealt with just this one section. This is what she dealt with. This is what she did. So she took all these 4 points and dealt with them. In fact, I think she even said 4 points, if I remember correct. And she went through each one. And I would say, for the most part, she got pretty good at a good understanding of what's going on here and explaining it to the audience. The only area that somewhat, I mean, she got it for the most part, but a little bit she got a little bit caught up on the case-by-case basis, but not too bad. But for overall, for someone that, I don't know what she does for a living, or what she, I mean, if you look at the panel on the Ruby Roo show, she's the most intelligent one there. Okay, so it tells you everything you need to know. So for her to understand this, for the most part, is very good. And that's the only channel that really comes to mind that really put out good information over the past week or since July 11th, 2019. So that's really a good channel to go to if you want to understand that one particular live show they did. She explained it pretty good. I would say she got it right probably about 95%, 95%, which is pretty damn good compared to all the other channels that failed, except for NVR Network. They didn't go into detail, but what they did put out after they corrected Jen was correct. So, but they didn't go into detail of stuff. Okay, but still, the information they did put out outside of after correcting Jen was correct. So that's good. That's very good for that channel. Believe me, this is real stuff. This is a court of law, a federal court of law. So monkey business here. Anyway, so that's it for this, and I have a few other videos I want to do today, and then I guess we're just back to usual. We'll go. I'm sure there's other channels out there that's going to screw up along the line, and I'll have to constructively criticize them and put that information back straight, make it right. And oh wow, that brings back an old saying, an old series I had. Make it right. Anyway, so here you have it, and that's it. That's it for me on this ruling. You guys have a good one. Boy.